you. And first of all, thanks for Old Courts for asking me to do this today. And I want to make it clear, this isn't about me. I'm definitely not selling anything today. This is more about, whether what I do or what we do, because I work with a partner, is of any use to you. And in particular, this place is very special because obviously we play here as musicians, but I think it's very important, particularly at the moment in this country, that the arts are highlighted. I think it's very important in people's lives. And over the years I've been doing what I do, I've realised literally how important that is. We have a free site, if you like, which has free services and webinars and everything. It is completely free. People always think there's a catch now. And we've got nearly 600 people. And I've realised within that, artists of all types communicating with each other is so very, very important. And what we have done, what we did together, came about from the fact that I was a writer. I initially helped another writer, and we talked about how isolating a lot of the arts are, particularly writing. And I want to make it clear that we have a site that, when we say writers, some of them write novels. We have a lot of poets, we have people who write song lyrics, so it is any type of writing. And clearly I'm going to talk about publishing and self-publishing, because that's the area we got into. But I thought I'd start first with an analogy, because I'm so old, I've lived through 3 revolutions: the social revolution, through the 60s and onwards, the digital revolution, which I'm lucky to be involved with as well, but the musical one. And throughout that time, if you think about what traditional music was hundreds of years ago, it was people who were well educated and had opportunities at a higher status level, not working class people. Working class people might write folk music, or they might have brass bands or choirs and so forth. So my analogy is that that's what's happening with writing now, that at one time you had to have connections, you had to have an agent, a publisher. And of course, I know people who do this anyway. It's not like self-publishing separate from the other. But now self-published authors are selling more than traditionally published authors. It's a bigger industry. And I'll explain a little bit about that afterwards, because it's become a lot more difficult for traditionally published authors as well. So I'll tell you a little bit about my story. I had a whole career in education, interestingly enough, in traditional education, in schools and colleges, and then in alternative and complementary education. So it's a little bit like what I'm doing now. And then I had a business in the middle where I wrote musicals, not for Andrew Lloyd Webber. So, we did it for like small theatre companies, and we did all the major tour operators like Wallace Thompson's and so forth. And it was wonderful. I didn't realise that I'd enjoy writing it. It was just great, especially if you're trying to do stuff that's meant to be funny. When I say funny in comedy, it's mostly what we call dad jokes now. But all the same, it's great going. I think me and Tom, if you don't know, Tom's my son. I remember going with both my sons and seeing one of our shows put on at a resort, and there's nothing more rewarding really. And that was it. I got on with my career. And again, within our community, we are starting, just for the hell of it, we're putting together a lot of data, and it's incredible how many people said they started writing, or they started playing guitar or whatever, started writing poetry when there was an event in their lives. And it's a bit like this. We had a big event in 2018, a sad event. I just sat down and started writing, and I don't know why. And I ended up writing something quite quirky. And one of the things that comes out of that is, what the hell do I do with this now? And again, the commonality of that is unbelievable. Everybody who joins this community knew, they said, well, I just want a book I can hold in my hand. And I don't know how I got from, I might not publish to having 6 books, but you get to that point where I decided on Amazon. Now let's talk about that a little bit, because obviously there are ethical issues about working with Amazon. But all the same, if you self-publish, there's only so many options. There are a few options. And although they're interested in making money rather than authors, it's a very easy way of setting yourself up. And then a few people buy it and they say it's good, and then you think, oh, I wonder whether this could be something. And then somebody goes on and says it's absolutely crap. you think, where am I going? In fact, I remember the first one, and it just said, bloody rubbish, don't bother. And of course it's still there because they don't go away. 1 star, bloody, you should have given no stars, I think. And then you just think, what if she's right? You know, and I'm the sort of, we talk about personalities in our community. I'm the sort of person who thought, perhaps I shouldn't do this then. Well, you've got to stick with it because obviously, you know, anybody, musicians, poets, you know, there's people out there just do that anyway. So, you know, I thought about looking at all the other reviews and they were similar. Anyway, so, you know, I thought I would stick at it. And just to explain where I am and what I am, I'm not, although I was described recently as an Amazon bestseller. Well, in some categories, it's not very hard to do that. I'm not being modest, it's not. If you choose the right categories, it's not. But I have sold a lot of books for self-published authors. I have. It's been consistent and still do. So one of my areas of expertise that I teach other people is, you know, how to advertise without spending a lot of money, for instance. So one of the things that I think is very important is that you position yourself. So you say, well, I'm a poetry writer, songwriter. And funnily enough, somebody phoned me up 3 days ago. He's a friend who lives in Peterborough, and he's never phoned me before. And he just said, I have to be off work, I'm not well, and I want to publish all my song lyrics. And all his song lyrics are meaningful, like Tom's are. And I said, yeah, you must do it. Because, you know, you're actually, in the same way you sing songs, you're sharing it with the world. And it's not about being brave, because, you know, it's putting it out there, and unless you're dire, unless everything's really bad, you won't get people constantly saying it's awful. What happened was, I thought, I'm so clever, I'll start doing some ghostwriting, and I did a bit with 1 or 2 people, and I met Lee then, and Lee's story was very, very interesting, because he had this story, and his dad was very involved with this story and novel, and he lost his dad. And he told me when I met him, he said, I've been doing this book for 10 years. Will you write it for me? And I said, no, because your ideas are good and I think you can do it. So it became a collaboration. He's got a book, he's writing his second one. He's probably got 4.85 stars everywhere. You know, so it's doing well, and it was a bit of a process. Now, we got on like a house on fire, and he's a really nice bloke. The only thing is, I've never met him face to face because he lives in Bournemouth. Well, what you do is, he said, I'm really worried about people who do this stuff and they're really isolated. I said, that's funny. And he said, you know, it can have all sorts of effects on you. And you said, what do people who live alone are doing this and they're frightened of publishing? So we started off, and being honest with you now, we started off with a site called Meet the Authors. And I'm not going to show you very much, let's see if we can get it to work. There we are, see. And this is a site where, it's just an extension of what he's doing, ghostwriting, blah, blah, blah. But as well, we decided when we started doing it to do a few free services. So on Meet the Authors, we started doing things that were a little bit different, because we noticed that if we interviewed authors and they didn't go on and on and on, they're great for promoting yourself and your books, because nobody knows what you look like. And one of the interesting things about doing this is that Michaela got a publishing contract when I knew her, and she was over the moon about it, and she later found out that she was a victim of tokenism. She found out that the company had to target a certain demographic, and they wanted some black ladies who wrote books. Well, she told them where to put it after that, because so I didn't know this till I did the interview. We were quite shocked, and a lot of people have commented on that. But she has another publishing contact, and she self-publishes as well. Now, one of the other things, when I was with the Society of Authors, I met 2 people. One guy is a very successful crime author, and he told me that his publisher does nothing to advertise. He's got to do it all himself. So he sought advice from us about how to start self-publishing. I met a young lady who'd written a book, had a publisher. She said when it came back from the editors, she said, I didn't recognise my own work. And I thought, well, that's shocking, because, you know, any of you in here who are poets, writers, I think what you write should be what you want to write. And that is the blessing of self-publishing. It means that you can have your own voice, but obviously there's hurdles that go with it. It's called the Micklegate Series. It's called the Micklegate Series because they're all set in York in the 16th century, because I was and am a historian. They're not heavy, to be honest. They're meant to be light and meant to be quite funny in parts. And when you Google it now, I won't scroll down, but you get a lot of results. And it's only yesterday I found out somebody's selling them on eBay. I mean, sites where they're selling them, I've never heard. They're selling them in France. And it's just people who buy somebody's books, I think, off Amazon, and then put a few quid on and sell them somewhere else. If they knew how successful I was, they probably won't bother. I mean, I don't sell that many, to be honest. It's odd what people do, isn't it? So I'll show you only briefly my site, and then we'll go on to this thing that I really want to talk about. Something that I did when I started writing, like some of you in here, I'm a creative person and I'm an artist too, and I thought, my first book I'm not going to work to a timetable, and I think it took me about a year, which was okay, but I thought I'm going to do illustrations, and of course self-publishing. I didn't realise that if I wanted colour pictures in a book, it's going to end up costing a fortune and I can't make a profit. So I found a way around it, but I use them for other purposes, and sometimes I'll use these for book covers and so forth. In fact, they're not all there really. Okay, so on to what Lee and I decided to do. We created this, which is called the Association of Self-Published Authors. We have people in there who are self-published. We have all sorts of people. We have musicians who just want to come to webinars and talk about creative stuff, and that's great. And we found that the webinar, sometimes we do a webinar where we want to inform a teacher, tell people some things. But we found that it's just great for sharing information. People in there tell us things we've never heard about, because all of this is a minefield. And there are so many subjects within this framework of publishing and self-publishing now that there's a lot to think about. In here we have everything from, we have loads and loads of blogs, mostly that I've done, and we now have members who post in there. You see there's a lot. You can see I've done quite a few. And you can see also some members who have done some. Diane has written a series of books about Jane Austen. Yes, a life story. Done 3 books about life story. So, she's well informed, and her books are very, very good, to be honest. So, this illusion sometimes that people are self-publishing, they can't get a contract or they're not very good, is not necessarily true. But you do have this whole range from people who write novels and they lead a lot more work to people who literally make millions of pounds now. That's where it's going with this, So there is no criteria. Anybody wants to be a member for whatever reason, we let them in. And it really is free. People say quite often, is there a catch or whatever? Well, there's no payment on here. There's specific services. We just say, well, we've got this other site if you want to buy specific services. But there's lots of training stuff and videos in here too. So if you know anybody who, the important thing is, somebody says, I think I might want to write something, even a short story, just point them this way, because it's a great environment. And I think I said before, we've got nearly 600 members now, so there's a lot of expertise being shared there, and lots of ideas. And to finish off, one of the things that we have talked about quite a lot is, how do you sell these damn things? Well, the best way is, if you know your genre, and some people are savvy enough to say, well, I'll find a genre that's popular first. Know your genre, know your audience, find out how to advertise. But we were speaking to someone in a webinar last week who said there was a church nearby who did book sales anyway. He said, I go there every week. He said, I sell about 50, 60 quid worth of novels. I said, well, where is it? I'm not getting I set up an Etsy. I got 200, out of the first 2 books, I got 100 of each printed. And I set up an Etsy site thinking, this go. But most people bought them as presents and you signed them, which was nice. And the feedback was really good. And eventually, one way or another, I sold them. So people have all sorts of ideas. Jo, as my wife, had a wonderful idea once, didn't you? You said, would you like to tell them?
No.
Yeah. Well, she said, because we're in York, she said, why don't we have a market stall at Christmas?
That's what I was going to suggest.
Yeah. And one of the downsides was we were more with the fruit and veg than we were with the Christmas market stalls. But we were both really ill, weren't we? We were really, really ill. We stayed in Tadcaster. We got up at 4 o'clock and we were so ill. And then you only have a window where you can get all your stuff loaded up. And it was just so cold.
It was windy,
I've never been so cold in my life.
I'm cold and I'm not well.
Do you sell to any York bookshops? I just thought if there was an independent that would
Well,
be
that's a great question. We're going to shopping.
Sorry, yes.
No, absolutely not. And Lee, it's all about personality. Lee goes in libraries and said, I've got this book, I'm writing another one. Will you put it in your library? You know, and you negotiate it. I'm not quite that bold face to face, you know, but that is the thing to do as well. But bookshops usually will take your books on and, you know, if they sell them, they want something on top. It's funny when I had something which I've not brought up here. When I do Facebook ads, I get a lot of feedback, and they're very, very nice. They're very encouraging. And I wouldn't say about a fan base, but I've got a lot of people who read all the books, and they're very nice. But some say, I won't buy it from Amazon. Is it any books? I'm going to whatever. And, you know, they go in a bookshop and order it, but they buy it from Amazon. I've not got the heart to tell them, really, but, you know, they're only going to buy it, which is what they do, you know. Because I've asked in Waterstones, that's exactly what they do. But I've got nothing wrong with people having ethics about things because, you know, it's difficult. Anyway, there it is. The site for Asper is simply asper.uk. So if you want to look at it or you want to share it with anybody, that is fine. My books don't matter. I'm not selling them. They're irrelevant except for what I've told you today. And that's as far as I'll go because you probably tell I could talk forever, but you don't want to listen to me. No, it's fine. I mean, does anybody want to ask any question about what I've said or anything?
Right, you go first because I'm not right. Go on.
Okay, so I self-published my first book years ago on Lulu, and that was back when you had to buy an ISBN number separately.
Yes.
So I didn't do anything with it. If I then redo this book and publish it again as a self-published, is it possible, having done something self-published, to then approach a publisher?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a general thought that if you put a book somewhere, especially if it's sold a few, that publishers won't touch it, but it's not true.
Right.
And what happens the other way around? I mean, Amazon really aren't interested in creative people until, I think when I sold over 2,000 or 3,000, they started, you know, I started had a relationship with them then, which is the same thing, they were making money off me basically. Absolutely, yeah. And you can actually get a different ISBN. So if you used Amazon, they give you one for free. If you do give them a free, and it can be expensive doing stuff like that, can't it? Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That was a question from your question. If you buy an ISBN from whoever sells them, is it expensive or does it depend on?
Do you mind me asking what you paid for? Do you remember what you paid?
I haven't done that yet, so
right.
I don't
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
I know my son self-published a book, and when he did his, he did it through Amazon, and that was automatic.
Yes, it was.
And he could sell it as an ebook automatically as well.
Yeah.
Whereas back when I did this with Lulu, you couldn't do that.
That's right.
I have another question, which is about. So I'm helping a charity self-publish their first book, and it's poetry and photography. So there's a lot of colour photos in there.
Yeah.
The way that I've been looking at possibly doing it is they've decided ethically they don't want anything to do with Amazon. So it's going to go back to Lulu. And someone said, well, if you order one copy from somewhere like Lulu, that will give you the proof copy that you need. But then you can submit that to a printers and get a big batch done much more cheaply. Does that translate? Can you
absolutely
do that?
Absolutely. Well, it happened the other way around because I publish books on Amazon, as I said. They're published elsewhere. I've got them on Apple and other things. And when I got these books printed, and they were very good quality, they were better than this, very good quality. I just found somewhere in Poland, and they were cheap, and as I said, the quality. So just search around where you can get them at a low cost. And certainly some of them, even the one I'm thinking about, you can have colour pictures in, and it's not going to necessarily break the bank. And then you've just got to sell them so that you're making a little bit on top.
Because most of my books I sell through, if I put the form, and people buy them after the form. So
yes.
That's my main
Well, we have these training videos, and on one of them I said, you know, before you get to this point, you need a rule about what you would like to make, and everybody laughs and say, oh, well, I don't want any money or what. But you need to know, and I've always had a £2 rule, either on paperbacks, ebooks, whatever it is, all the way through. If I get £2 out of it for sale, then I'm happy, so I'll work it out from there backwards. So if they do have anything that's got colour photos in, unfortunately, the book's got to be, or if the bigger books, I've got to charge a bit more, you know, because but yeah, and sometimes, if you think there's an outlet, that's a much better way of doing it. I think you should sell them. The charities should be able to.
Yeah.
It's a better way of doing it. Yeah.
I've got a quick question about copyright.
Yes.
Is that all come with the ISBN stuff? Or do you have to, you know,
Well,
copyright your work?
It's sort of, well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I do, and it sort of happens because I've always been involved in creative stuff, and especially when we wrote these shows. And going back to then, it was a minefield. I remember at one point, trying to copyright some of our work was quite expensive. There was a place in London and it cost a lot of money. And I remember when we started, we did a show where we used other people's songs. And somebody in America wanted 10 grand just so we could use Johnny B. Good in a Chuck Berry song. I said, this isn't working. So we had to look at how rights were in Britain and all this. But I found, it's called Copyright House, which is placed online. And it really is cheap as chips. It's very cheap. You pay a little sum every year, and all you have to do is upload what you've got. So when you self-publish, it happens the other way around. They say to you, "Is this your material?" You know. And sometimes when you tick a box, you think, "Oh, well, nobody will bother." But the legal stuff, Amazon are very keen on. You know, so they make sure that you pay your tax on stuff before you can publish. You know, and they make sure you're not using AI before you publish as well. You know, or at least you check a box. But you know, so I always try and do it above board. But yeah, it's always wise to copyright your work, simply because, you know, starting tomorrow, they might not read any of my books anymore. But it's like a lottery ticket. There might be one in several million chances. When I'm dead, there might be Harry Potter. So you've got to make sure you cover it.
Actually, because we said you finished the idea of someone. I remember that thing.
Yeah.
So publishing itself wouldn't count as copyright?
It can do in some ways. I mean, in reality, once you've published it and somebody sold it, somebody told me this. They said what you said, that if you publish it in your name and sell it, it should be enough. But I usually do this other thing as well. It's just it's no more than a record online, really. But I do that as well.
Way back, I used to
Post it to yourself.
Post it to yourself
Yes.
and not open it.
It's still legal. It's still a good way of doing it.
Yeah.
It still works, yeah.
Yeah.
So you can do that. Just have your books posted to yourself because you know that dates it as well. So that anything after that is not legitimate. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, is that on your website? That copyright site?
Yes, I think there's some stuff on there about copyright. Anything else?
So how much in general does it cost, or does it just depend on what the type of book is and how big it is?
Cost to do what? To publish?
Self-publish.
Again, if you use something like Amazon, Apple, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. So you've just got to work out what sort of money you want to make once it's sold. And one of the reasons I spent a year where everybody online, because I was looking at every video trying to think about it, and everybody said, don't bother with Facebook ads. But they really worked for me, and the beauty was, you could spend like, I don't know, $90, but $1 a pound a day. And after 3 days, if it's not working, you can just pull it and try something else. And after a bit, they give you a business advisor for free. And it's worth its weight in gold, because we said, one story I tell a lot is after a few years, they said, put an ad in on Boxing Day. And I couldn't fathom why I said put an ad in on Boxing Day. They said, well, everybody's spent and they have a rest and then they start using the vouchers and everything else. And that ad ran for 14 months. And I'm not talking so loads, but it made a profit for 14 months, you know. So they know all this stuff because they work for Facebook and they want to make money. So, you know, it can cost you nothing and you can make a little bit of money, you know. And sadly, it's not about what you did being brilliant. You know, there was somebody connected to, is it called 40 or 50 Shades of Grey?
50.
I can tell it now, you've read it.
I've read them all.
but you know, if people are saying to me, they're not very well written, but you know, they've made
They're a
millions
bit
of pounds,
silly.
so you know.
They are a bit silly, which is incredibly successful.
Yeah, I know. So you know, well,
It's very well written. She's done very well.
yeah. So it's not about that, is it? Yeah. Anything else?
No, I think I've anybody.
Oh,
Thank you so much. It was absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.